I'm Tom Carver, a high school teacher pushing 38, and I've always been a patient guy. But that night, as I hunted for anniversary getaway spots online, something inside me was ready to snap. I stumbled across Willow Creek Lodge, a place with glowing reviews, nestled in the Colorado foothills with candlelit dinners by the pool. Scrolling through their glossy website photos, I weighed the cost against my teacher's paycheck. My wife, Hannah, deserved something unforgettable for our 10th anniversary. She'd been burning the candle at both ends with those endless work trips and late nights at the county office. Then, I froze. One photo, labeled Poolside Serenity, July 2024, was meant to sell the resort's vibe: couples lounging by a shimmering pool, waiters balancing fancy drinks, the Rockies looming in the distance. But my eyes zeroed in on one woman by a lounge chair. Long, jet black hair spilled over her shoulders, her hand resting way too comfortably on some guy's chest, his fingers grazing a familiar dragonfly tattoo curling along her lower back. A tattoo I'd traced with my lips more times than I could count. Hannah's tattoo. My coffee mug slipped from my grip, exploding into shards on the oak floor. My hands shook as I zoomed in. No doubt about it. That jet black hair she'd switched to 6 months back, saying she wanted a fresh look. That tattoo she got on our honeymoon in Colombia. The way she tilted her head when she laughed, it was her. My mind spiraled. July, that education summit in Denver she'd gone to for 4 days. She came back radiant, gushing about motivational talks and new connections. Transformative, she'd called it, her eyes bright but dodging mine. Said the keynote speaker shifted her perspective. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. The photo's metadata pinned it to July 12th, smack in the middle of her so-called summit. A quick check on the state education site, my fingers fumbling in panic, showed the event was scrapped due to funding issues. Morning hit like a cold slap, dragging me back to routine. Hannah was in the kitchen, humming, her dark hair catching the sunlight as she flipped pancakes. She looked stunning, as always. Too stunning. "You're up early," she said, not turning around. "Rough night?" "Couldn't sleep," I muttered, leaning against the doorway, watching her like she was someone I didn't know. "Been thinking about our anniversary." She slid pancakes onto a plate with smooth precision. "Oh? What's the plan?" "Maybe a trip somewhere nice. Found this spot, Willow Creek Lodge." Her spatula froze for half a heartbeat. "Sounds pricey." "Not really our style, is it?" "Worth it for you," I said, stepping closer, catching her reflection in the window. "Ever been there?" "Me? Nah." Her laugh sounded tight, like a string about to snap. "You know teachers don't exactly hang out at ritzy resorts." I nodded, but another lie landed heavy in my gut. Our son, Owen, barreled downstairs, his backpack slung over one shoulder. At 15, he's got my quiet grit but Hannah's quick grin. That morning, though, his knuckles were bruised and puffy. "What happened to your hands?" Hannah asked, her mom instincts kicking in. "Nothing. Just a thing with Kyle Warner at school yesterday," Owen said, shrugging. Hannah set her mug down, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Fighting doesn't solve anything, Owen." "Sometimes it does," he shot back, his voice sharp. "Sometimes you gotta show people you're not their doormat." I caught his gaze, and something flickered there, anger, maybe shame. "I'll drive you," I said. We rode in silence. Finally, I broke it. "What did Kyle say to you?" His jaw clenched. "Doesn't matter." I dealt with it. "It matters," I said, my teacher's voice steady but firm. "Just family stuff. About Mom." His words hung heavy. I didn't push further. After dropping him off, I sat in my truck in the school lot for 20 minutes, staring at my phone. Then I scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in ages, Lucas Reed. Lucas was a student of mine 8 years back, sharp, a little rough around the edges, obsessed with tech. Now he's a cybersecurity hotshot at a firm in Seattle. If anyone could help me unravel this mess, it was him. "Mr. Carver?" Lucas's voice carried a spark of surprise when he picked up. "Been a while. Need a favor, Lucas." "Something personal." "Messy." A beat of silence. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that might bend a few rules." "I'm in." That night, Lucas rolled up to my place in a sleek, modded Subaru, its backseat packed with enough tech gear to run a startup. He'd grown into his smarts, still wiry and intense but now with the swagger of a guy who knew his worth. Alright, Lucas said, setting up a laptop that looked straight out of a sci-fi flick in my office. Lay it all out. I showed him the resort photo first. His eyebrows shot up. Damn, Mr. Carver. That's heavy. There's more. I spilled it all, the cancelled summit, Hannah's lies about her schedule, the way she'd been acting off for months. Lucas's fingers danced over the keys. Let's start with phone records. Then we'll see what else we can pull. Is that legal? I asked. You're on the family plan, right? Means you've got access. His grin was razor sharp. We'll sort out the fine print later. The phone records hit like a punch. 6 months back, calls started piling up to a number not in Hannah's usual contacts. Texts lined up with her late nights at work. Number registered to Mason Holt, Lucas said, pulling up a social media profile. Real estate guy. Married. 2 kids. Ring a bell? I stared at a photo of a polished guy in his early 40s, all perfect hair and tailored suits. Mason Holt. I'd seen him at school events, always schmoozing, tossing around talk of land deals and investments. His wife's name is Vanessa, Lucas added, clicking through more profiles. Vanessa, Mason Holt's wife, works at the clinic in town. Looks like they've been hitched for 12 years, so he's stepping out on her too. Things got uglier when Lucas pulled up financials. Hannah opened a bank account under her old last name 3 months back, he said, his voice low. She's been siphoning off cash in small chunks. My head spun. How much? 15 grand so far. But there's more. Lucas's face tightened. She's been emailing a lawyer, Karen Walsh. Specializes in messy divorces and custody fights. The truth slammed into me like a freight train. This wasn't just a fling. Hannah was building a trap. She's setting me up, I muttered, my voice barely audible. Seems like it, Lucas said. My guess? She's waiting for something big, maybe a payout or some kind of leverage. I thought about my dad's passing last month. His estate was still tied up in legal knots, and the life insurance check was due any day. My dad's money, I said, my throat tight. She's holding out for that. Lucas gave a grim nod. Then we gotta move quickly. The next 2 weeks were a blur of quiet panic. I set up security cameras around the house, claiming it was to deter burglars. Tiny voice recorders went in the bedroom and living room. I told myself it was for proof, not spying. But Hannah, the woman I shared a bed with, felt like a stranger now. Worse, she felt like the enemy. Her behavior started shifting. She stayed late at the county office, blaming new projects. At home, she'd smother me with affection, like she was trying to erase guilt or fake a perfect marriage. One night, she curled up beside me on the couch. You've been off lately, Tom, she said, her voice soft. Everything okay? I stared at her, really started. When did those crinkles by her eyes turn into something colder? When did her smile start looking like a mask? Just worn out, I said. Kids at school are running me ragged. Maybe we should take that trip you like the sound of. Clear our heads. Her fingers danced across my chest. Sounds perfect. A fresh start. Could be nice, I said, kissing her forehead. Once Dad's estate clears. Money's tight till then. Her body stiffened for a split second. How long's that gonna take? Couple weeks, maybe. That night, she thought I was out cold when she crept out of bed and whispered into her phone in the bathroom. But the recorder caught it all. He says a few weeks. I know, love, it's tough. No, he's clueless. The lawyer says we just need to wait a bit more. Once the money hits, we're set. Lying in the dark, listening to my wife plot against me, something hard and cold settled in my gut. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. Betrayal's one hell of a teacher, and I was a fast learner. Lucas's surveillance laid it all bare. Mason's sleek BMW showed up at our place twice a week while I was at school. They'd meet at a Hilton in downtown Tucson every Monday and Wednesday. Dinners at restaurants in the next county, thinking they were untouchable. But Lucas's contacts and hidden cameras didn't miss a thing. Check this out, he said one night, pulling up footage from a diner parking lot. Hannah and Mason, arguing by his car. Audio's rough, but I can clean it up. When he did, my blood turned to ice. We can't keep this up forever, Mason was saying. Vanessa's starting to ask questions. Just a little longer, Hannah replied. The estate money's coming soon. Then we make our move. What about Owen? Mason asked. He'll be fine. Tom won't fight for custody. He's too soft, always has been. And if he does? Mason pressed out. Hannah's laugh cut like a blade. Then we paint him as unhinged. Dangerous. I've been tracking his moods, his late-night beers. One slip up, and no judge will let him near Owen. You sure you can pull that off? Sweetheart, I've been married to him for years. I know every weak spot he's got. I watched the clip 3 times, my jaw locked tight. Finally, I turned to Lucas. I need a lawyer. Now. That night, I met with Diane Powell, my dad's attorney for over 2 decades. She's a bulldog, smart, no nonsense, and allergic to legal games. This is solid, she said, scanning Lucas's evidence. Really solid. But it's risky. Risky how? I asked. Your wife's clearly angling to provoke you, maybe a fight, a meltdown, something she can spin in court to make you look unfit. Diane leaned back in her leather chair, her eyes sharp. Hannah's already chatting with a divorce lawyer. She's not messing around. So, Tom, you want to play defense or offense? What's that mean? I asked, my stomach churning. We can wait for her to make her move and hit back with all this evidence, clean, airtight, by the book. Or, Diane's grin was pure predator. We file first. Lock down the assets, catch her off guard, and put her on her heels before she knows what's coming. I thought about Owen's bruised knuckles, the way he'd been scrapping at school to defend me without me even realizing I needed it. How fast can you move? Papers filed by tomorrow morning. Restraining order by noon. She'll get served at work, right in front of her coworkers. Do it. That night, I walked into the house to find Hannah cooking my favorite, grilled pork chops, garlic mashed potatoes, and asparagus. She'd cracked open a bottle of red and was wearing the dress from our first anniversary. What's the occasion? I asked, my voice flat. Do I need one to treat my husband right? She leaned in for a kiss, and I caught the bitter tang of wine and lied on her breath. I love you, Tom. You know that, right? Love you too, I said, the words heavy. The last lie we trade. The bomb dropped at 2:53 p.m. the next day, right in the middle of my 5th period literature class. My phone pinged with a text from Diane, papers served. Brace for impact. I was helping a kid with his essay when the classroom door flew open. Hannah stood there, face twisted with fury, clutching a manila envelope in trembling hands. You piece of, she stopped short, remembering the room full of students. 28 pairs of eyes locked on her, eating up the drama. Everybody out, I said calmly. Ma'am, you can't, I started, but Hannah cut me off. Out, she shouted. The kids didn't wait, grabbing their stuff and bolting, already whispering about the gossip that had fueled the cafeteria for weeks. Once we were alone, she flung the papers at my face, divorce petition, asset freeze, restraining orders against her and Mason Holt. Diane hadn't missed a beat. Humiliate me like this? Hannah spat. How dare you? I straightened the papers, slow and deliberate. Humiliate you? My voice was low, dangerous. I pulled out my phone and showed her the Willow Creek Lodge photo. Her face was drained of color. That's not, I can explain. Explain the canceled summit? The secret bank account? The lawyer? I stepped closer, my voice steady but burning. Explain how you plan to paint me as a wreck to steal my dad's money and run off with your boyfriend? Tom, 15 grand, she stammered. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. My control shattered. You've been scheming for months, turning our marriage into a scam, using Owen as a pawn, making me look like an idiot. Her shock shifted to calculation, her eyes darting for an angle. Okay, fine. I've been seeing Mason. But, Tom, our marriage has been dead for years. You know it. I was just chasing something real. By stealing from me? Using our son? I snapped. Owen's been fighting at school because kids are talking about you. He's out there defending you, and you don't even care. That hit her hard. Her mask cracked, just for a second. He doesn't get it. He gets that his mom's a liar and a thief. Her hand flew out, slapping my cheek so hard my head snapped sideways. We froze, staring at each other in stunned silence. Then I smiled, cold and steady. Thanks for that. What? She whispered. I nodded at the security camera above the door. You just assaulted me on video, right after getting served a restraining order. Diane's gonna have a field day. Hannah's eyes flicked to the camera, horror sinking in. You set me up. Learn from the best, I said. The door opened, and Principal Whitaker stepped in with 2 security guards. Mrs. Carver, you need to leave. Now. As they escorted her out, she spun back, venom in her voice. This isn't over, Tom. I know things about you, things that'll ruin you. I watched her go, a strange calm washing over me. The fight was out in the open now. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Your wife's a snake, but you're done for. Back off or regret it. Mason Holt, no question. I forwarded it to Diane and Lucas, then typed back, bring it. When I left work, Mason was waiting in the school parking lot, leaning against his BMW like he owned the place, arms crossed, trying to look tough in his overpriced suit. We need to talk, he called as I headed for my truck. Nope, I said, not breaking stride. He stepped in front of me. You're making a big mistake, teacher. I stopped, sizing him up. Taller, probably stronger, definitely richer. But I grew up in small-town Montana, where words weren't always the go-to for settling scores. Am I? Hannah loves me, he said, smirking. Really loves me. What you've got? That's just routine. Comfort. I can give her things you'll never touch. Like what? Fancy lies? 5-star cheating? His jaw tightened. I can give her a real life, not this small-time, middle-of-nowhere trap you've stuck her in. If she wants you, she can go. But she's not taking my son or my money. Your money? He laughed, sharp and mocking. You think your teacher's paycheck and your dad's little estate make you somebody? I pull in more in a month than you see in a year. Then you won't mind footing the bill for your own divorce. That stung. He leaned in, voice dropping low. You don't know who you're messing with, Carver. I've got connections in this town. I can make your life hell. You think you can make my life harder than it already is? I said, my voice ice cold. Harder than finding out my wife's been sneaking around with you? Harder than knowing she's been stashing cash and plotting to ruin my bond with my son? I gave Mason a bitter smile. You're gonna have to get real creative. Mason's cool cracked. You smug little. He stopped short as Owen rounded the corner from the bus stop, backpack slung over his shoulder. My son sized up the scene fast, his dad squaring off with a guy he'd probably seen at school fundraisers. Everything all right, Dad? Owen asked, his voice steady but wary. All good, kid. Mr. Holt was just heading out. I kept my eyes on Mason. Mason glanced between us, something sly flickering in his gaze. Nice boy you got there. Be a shame if something tanked his college chances, bad grades, trouble at school, family drama. Colleges eat that stuff up. That did it. The last thread of my patience snapped like a worn-out rope. Get in the truck, Owen, I said, my tone low. Now. Something in my voice made Owen move fast. He climbed into the truck without a word. I waited until the door clicked shut, then stepped close to Mason, my voice barely a murmur. Let me make this clear. I've spent 15 years teaching kids. I've heard every threat, every cheap trick in the book. You're not special. You're not scary. You're just another guy with a fat wallet who thinks he's above the rules. You're screwing up, Carver, Mason hissed. No, you screwed up when you came after my son. I leaned in, my words sharp. Stay away from my family. Stay away from my job. And tell Hannah if she ever reaches out to Owen directly, I'll have her arrested for breaking the restraining order. Mason tried to scrape together some pride. This ain't over. It is, I said. You just haven't figured it out yet. That night, Lucas called with bad news. Mason's been busy, he said. Hired a private investigator, some shady guy named Vince Harlow. Specializes in digging up, or cooking up, dirt for custody battles. What kind of dirt could they pin on me? I asked, pacing my living room. Anything. Old parking tickets, college screw-ups, money troubles, even medical stuff. These guys are relentless. I ran through my past. I'd been a solid student, a loyal husband, a good dad. The worst mark on me was a speeding ticket from my early 20s. Let him dig, I said. There's nothing there. That's not how it works, Mr. Carver, Lucas warned. Guys like Harlow don't just find dirt, they make it. Fake witnesses, doctored records, staged incidents. If Hannah's set on taking you down, they'll find a way. Next morning, Lucas's warning came true. I got to school and found Principal Whitaker waiting in my classroom. "Tom, we need to talk," he said, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Whitaker's a decent guy but spineless, always dodging tough calls. His face told me I was in for it. "What's up, Greg?" I asked, setting down my coffee. "School board called this morning. Parents are raising concerns about your personal life bleeding into your work. That scene with your wife yesterday didn't help. And there's talk about inappropriate behavior." "What kind of behavior?" I felt my pulse kick up. Whitaker squirmed. "Some parents are worried about you getting too close with students. Mentoring, that's crossing lines." My gut twisted. "You mean Lucas Reed? He graduated 8 years ago. He's just helping me with tech stuff." "And what about Kayla Morgan?" Whitaker said, barely meeting my eyes. "Kayla's a senior in my honors English class, whip-smart, headed for college despite a rough home life. I'd written her recommendation letters, helped with scholarship forms." "What about her?" "Her parents claim you've been spending too much time with her after school. Private meetings, phone calls." "I'm her academic advisor," I said, my voice tight. "She's applying to colleges. They're saying it's more than that." Whitaker sighed. "Look, Tom, I know you, but this is serious. Until we clear this up, I'm putting you on administrative leave." I packed up my desk in a daze, my hands moving on autopilot. As I hauled my box of stuff to the parking lot, I spotted Kayla by my truck, her eyes red and puffy. "Mr. Carver, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I told them nothing happened, but they won't listen. Someone called my parents, said you and I were, it's not your fault," I cut in, setting the box down. I looked her square in the eye. "You did nothing wrong, Kayla." "Neither did I. Someone's trying to trash my name, and they're using you to do it. Don't let them make you feel bad for working hard." She nodded, swiping at her tears. "What's gonna happen?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But you're gonna graduate, go to college, and live a great life. This isn't about you." After she walked off, I sat in my truck and called Diane. "They moved faster than I thought," she said after I laid it all out. "This PI, Harlow, he's a pro at stirring up scandals. Can you stop it?" I asked, gripping the wheel. "I'll try, but, Tom, this is gonna get uglier before it gets better. They're coming for your job, your reputation, your rights as a dad. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Owen, about my dad's estate that'd give him a shot at college, about the 15 years of marriage Hannah was ready to burn for a slick real estate guy. "I'm ready," I said. The fight kicked off at 9 a.m. sharp in Judge Eleanor Watkins's courtroom. Diane had told me Watkins was tough but fair, perfect for a case this messy. Hannah sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, Karen Walsh, a hard-edged woman who thrived on nasty divorce cases. Mason wasn't there, but I could feel his fingerprints on every calculated move. "Your Honor," Karen Walsh began, her voice sharp, "my client is the victim of a controlling, erratic husband who's launched a vicious campaign to intimidate her, steal her child, and ruin her financially." Diane stood, calm but fierce. "Your Honor, we have overwhelming evidence that Mrs. Carver has been carrying on an affair, siphoning off marital funds, and scheming to frame my client with false domestic violence claims." Judge Watkins raised a hand, silencing the room. "I've reviewed the initial filings. These are serious accusations. Ms. Walsh, let's hear your evidence of controlling behavior first." Walsh laid it out like a seasoned pro. Photos of Hannah's flushed face after our confrontation at school. Screenshots of texts I supposedly sent, texts Lucas later proved were faked. Testimony from that sleazy PI, Vince Harlow, claiming I'd been inappropriate with a student. "Your Honor," Walsh said, "Mr. Carver's aggression is escalating. He's installed cameras in their home without my client's knowledge, stalked her movements, monitored her phone, and now he's been suspended from teaching for improper conduct with minors." Then it was Diane's turn, and she came out swinging. She held up a poster-sized print of the Willow Creek Lodge photo. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between Hannah and Mason. The secret bank account with 15 grand stashed away. Recorded conversations about gaming the legal system. But the knockout punch was the school security footage. Your Honor, Diane said, let's see what really happened in that so-called confrontation. The courtroom went dead quiet as the video played, Hannah's hand cracking across my face, my calm response, her dawning horror when she spotted the camera. As you can see, Your Honor, Diane said, Mrs. Carver is the one who assaulted my client. He simply documented it. Judge Watkins sat still for a long moment. Ms. Walsh, care to explain this footage? Walsh huddled with Hannah, then stood. Your Honor, my client was under immense emotional stress. Ms. Powell, the judge said, show me the financials. Diane laid out the proof, Hannah's secret account, the siphon money, her lawyer talks that started long before I filed for divorce. Your Honor, Mrs. Carver has been orchestrating this for months, stealing from their joint accounts and carrying on an affair while plotting to win custody through lies. Judge Watkins studied the evidence for what felt like forever. Finally, she looked up. I'm granting the plaintiff's request for temporary full custody pending further investigation. Mrs. Carver, you'll have supervised visitation only. The asset freeze stays in place, and the restraining order against both Mrs. Carver and Mr. Holt is extended indefinitely. Walsh shot to her feet. Your Honor, that's excessive. Ms. Walsh, Watkins said, her voice like steel, your client assaulted her husband in front of students after being served legal papers. She's stolen money and conducted a months-long affair while scheming to manipulate this court. My ruling is generous. As we left the courtroom, Hannah grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. You think you've won? She hissed. This is just the start. I'll ruin you before I let you take my son. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a stranger where the woman I loved used to be, someone desperate, dangerous. You already ruined yourself, I said quietly. I just caught it on tape. Mason Holt was waiting in the courthouse parking lot, his polished facade gone. His fancy suit was rumpled, his hair a mess, his face red with rage. You've cost me everything, he growled as I neared my truck. Vanessa filed for divorce this morning. She's taking the kids, the house, the work. Maybe you should have thought twice before torching two families, I said, not breaking stride. This ain't over, teacher, Mason spat, his voice shaking. You think hiding behind lawyers and judges keeps you safe? You don't know what I can do. Diane appeared at my side. Mr. Holt, you're violating a restraining order. Leave now, or I'm calling the cops. Mason glared between us, his face twisting with fury. You're all gonna pay for this. All of you. He stormed to his BMW, tires screeching as he peeled out. That guy's trouble, Diane said, her voice low. You need to watch your back. I've got Lucas tracking his communications, I said. If he tries anything, Tom, Diane cut in, deadly serious. Men like Mason Holt don't just threaten. When they lose it all, they get reckless. Desperate folks do dumb things. That evening, I was helping Owen with his geometry homework when Lucas called, his voice urgent. Mr. Carver, you gotta hear this. Mason's been on the phone all day. I tapped into a few calls. What's he up to? I asked, my gut tightening. He's trying to hire someone to rough you up. Nothing that'd point back to him, but enough to land you in the hospital, maybe get you arrested, make you look unhinged. Cold dread settled in my chest. How close is he to finding someone? Real close. Guy named Jimmy Rourke, a small-time crook, does muscle-for-hire jobs. Mason's meeting him tomorrow night at the old factory district. I glanced at Owen, hunched over his notebook, clueless about the storm brewing around us. Can you record the meet? Already on it, Lucas said. But, Mr. Carver, maybe you should just call the cops. With what? We've got nothing solid until he makes a move, and by then it could be too late. So what's the plan? I paused, thinking hard. Record everything. And I want to be there when it goes down. That's risky, Lucas warned. Everything's risky now, I said. I'm done hiding while they try to tear my life apart. The next night, I parked my truck a half-mile from the factory district in Tucson and slipped through the shadows toward an abandoned warehouse where Mason was set to meet his hired thug. Lucas was already in place, his high-tech camera and audio gear ready to go. Sounds crystal clear, he whispered through my earpiece. They're right on time. Mason's BMW rolled up at 9 p.m. sharp. A beat-up Ford pickup followed a few minutes later, and a burly guy in a flannel shirt climbed out, Jimmy Rourke, per Lucas's intel. He looked like the kind of man who settled disputes with his fists. I crept closer, sticking to the shadows of rusted shipping crates, their conversation coming through clear as day. Just rough him up, Mason was saying. Nothing permanent, but enough to keep him in a hospital bed for a week or two. Make it look like a random robbery. That'll cost extra, Rourke grunted. Messing with a teacher draws attention. How much extra? $6,000. Cash. Deal. Mason handed over an envelope. I want it done tomorrow night. He leaves school around 6:30, walks to his truck alone. What if he fights back? Rourke asked. He's a teacher, not a brawler. Just don't leave anything that ties back to me. I'd heard enough. I started backing away, but my boot clipped a piece of scrap metal, the clang ringing out like a gunshot in the quiet lot. Both men spun toward the sound. What was that? Mason snapped. Rourke yanked a flashlight from his coat, already moving. Someone's out there. I bolted. I made it maybe 60 yards before Rourke's beam caught me. Stop. Mason's voice echoed through the dark. Get him. I sprinted through the maze of crates and broken machinery, my old field trips with students to this place giving me an edge. Behind me, Rourke crashed through the junk, swearing and shouting. I reached my truck just as he burst out from between two crates. The guy was faster than he looked and madder than I'd expected. Think you can snoop on us, teacher, he growled, grabbing my jacket as I fumbled for the door. Big mistake. His first punch slammed into my ribs, knocking the wind out of me. The second caught my jaw, splitting my lip. But 15 years of handling rowdy teens and moonlighting on construction sites had toughened me up. I drove my elbow into Rourke's gut, then spun and landed a hook that snapped his head back. He stumbled, giving me just enough room to snatch a crowbar from my truck bed. Back off, I warned, gripping it tight. Rourke wiped blood from his lip, grinning. Now we're having fun. The fight was short but brutal. Rourke had size and street smarts, but I had a father's fury and a life to protect. When it was over, he was on the ground, clutching his side, and I stood over him, crowbar in hand, blood dripping from my chin. Tell Mason the deal's off, I said, my voice low. And if you come near me or my family again, you'll regret it. Rourke nodded, crawling to his truck. I drove home, hands shaking, adrenaline pumping like wildfire. Lucas called before I hit my street. Holy crap, Mr. Carver, I got it all, Mason hiring the guy, the cash handoff, the whole deal. This'll bury him. Good, I said. Send it to Diane, now. Done. But you okay? That looked rough. I touched my swollen jaw, tasted copper. I'm good. Better than good. For the first time in months, I felt like me again. Diane didn't waste a second. By 8 a.m., she'd filed charges against Mason Holt for soliciting violence and conspiracy to commit assault. Lucas's evidence was bulletproof: video, audio, bank records of the payment. Mason was cuffed at his real estate office in front of his staff and clients. But Hannah came back swinging. You set him up, she screamed over the phone that afternoon. You planned that whole thing. I caught a crime in progress, I said coolly. Big difference. The cops want to talk to Owen, she said, her voice venomous. They're digging into our marriage, asking if you've ever been violent at home. My blood froze. What? They're looking at whether you've got a history of aggression, whether that fight with Rourke was part of a pattern. That's insane, I snapped. I was defending myself against a guy Mason hired to jump me. Prove it, she said, her tone smug. Without Lucas's shady surveillance, without your planted evidence, prove you're not some hothead who beats people up and scares his family. I froze, realizing she'd turned the tables. By fighting back against Rourke, I'd stepped right into her trap. By jumping the gun instead of sitting back, I'd handed them a loaded weapon. Hannah, don't drag Owen into this, I pleaded over the phone. He's been through enough. Her voice curled into a smirk I could almost see. Then drop the charges against Mason. Drop the divorce. Give me what I want, and maybe I'll spare our son from testifying against his hot-headed dad. What you want is my dad's money and a free pass to run off with your boyfriend, I shot back. What I want, she said, venom dripping, is a life that doesn't mean being chained to a small-town nobody who thinks cameras and fistfights fix everything. I hung up and dialed Diane right away. They're flipping the story, she said after I filled her in. Painting you as the bad guy, making Mason look like the victim. It's a sharp move. Can they make it stick? I asked, my stomach in knots. Depends on what Owen says when they talk to him. If he backs you up, we're solid. If not, She trailed off. That night, I sat Owen down for the toughest talk we'd ever had. Son, some folks are gonna ask you about our family, about me, about whether I've ever hurt you or your mom. Owen's face was too serious for a 15-year-old. I know, Dad. Mom already got to me. My heart dropped. What did she say? She said you've been acting wild since you found out about her and Mr. Holt. That you've been spying on her, picking fights. Tell me to be honest about how scary you've been. And what are you gonna tell them? I asked, barely breathing. Owen paused, his eyes steady. The truth. That you've never touched me or Mom, not even when we pushed your buttons. That you worked double shifts to buy my football gear and pay for Mom's master's degree. That you coached my Pee Wee team for years and never missed a game. His voice didn't waver. And that Mom's been lying to everyone, including herself, for months. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Owen. I'm not dumb, Dad, he said. I see what she did. I get why you've been different. And I know why she's trying to make you look bad. He met my gaze, firm. But I know who you are. That's what I'm telling them. The next morning, Child Protective Services showed up with a detective to question Owen. I had to wait outside, pacing, while they grilled my son about our home life, whether he'd ever seen me get violent, whether he felt safe with me. The interview dragged on for 2 hours. When they came out, the detective's face gave nothing away. Mr. Carver, your son's a real grown-up for his age. He's been through a lot. He also speaks highly of you, says you've never laid a hand on him or his mom, never lost your cool in a bad way, never made him feel unsafe. Relief hit me like a wave. Thank you, I said, but, the detective added, we're still looking into that fight with Jimmy Rourke. Even if it was self-defense, it raises questions about your judgment. I was protecting myself from a guy Mason hired to jump me, I said, my voice tight. That's your story, he replied. But without Lucas's surveillance, which might not hold up in court due to privacy laws, it's your word against theirs. That afternoon, Diane called with worse news. The judge is questioning whether Lucas's recordings are admissible, she said. They were obtained without everyone's consent, which could violate Arizona law. But they prove Mason paid someone to hurt me. I said, gripping the phone. I know, but if we can't use them, our best evidence is gone. Without it, the fight with Rourke looks like you just attacked someone. I felt trapped, like the walls were closing in. So what now? We hope Owen's testimony convinces the judge you're not a threat to your family, Diane said. And we cross our fingers that Mason's lawyer slips up. We didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, at the custody hearing, Mason's lawyer, a slick guy named Victor Klein, made his mistake while cross-examining Owen. He was trying to get my son to say I'd turned violent, unpredictable. Isn't it true your dad's been acting off lately? Klein asked, leaning in. More aggressive, controlling? He's been stressed, Owen said carefully. Anyone would be if they found out their wife was cheating and stealing. But he's been tracking your mom, right? Spying on her? He's been trying to understand why she was lying, Owen countered. And he fought Jimmy Rourke, didn't he? Used a weapon? He defended himself against someone who attacked him, Owen said, unflinching. Klein pounced, sensing a crack. How do you know Rourke struck first? Were you there? No, but... So you don't really know what happened, do you? You're just trusting your dad's word. Owen turned to Judge Watkins, his voice clear. Your Honor, I know my dad. My whole life, he's taught me violence is a last resort, only when someone's coming for you or your family. He's taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's tough, even when people you love turn out to be dishonest. Klein tried to cut in, but Owen kept going. My mom's been lying for months about where she was, who she was with, what she planned to do with our family. But my dad's never lied to me. Not once. So when he says he was defending himself, I believe him, because he's never given me a reason to doubt him. Judge Watkins stayed quiet for a long beat. Mr. Klein, any more questions for this witness? Klein fumbled, caught off guard. No, Your Honor. We'll take a short recess, Watkins said. During the break, Diane found me in the hallway. Your son just saved your case, she said, a rare smile breaking through. How? I asked. He showed the judge what kind of dad you were, honest, steady, raising a kid who speaks truth even when it's hard. That's not the picture of an abusive father. When court resumed, Judge Watkins delivered her ruling. I've heard about surveillance, affairs, stolen money, and violence. What's clear is a family ripped apart by lies and betrayal. But I've also heard a 15-year-old boy speak with rare honesty and maturity about his father. She looked at me, her gaze firm. Mr. Carver, your methods have raised eyebrows, but your intent seems to be shielding your family and finances from calculated deceit. The evidence points to Mrs. Carver conducting an affair while scheming to game the legal system for profit. Judge Watkins turned to Hannah, her voice cutting like a blade. Mrs. Carver, your actions have been deplorable. You've shattered your family's trust, siphoned off shared funds, and tried to fabricate claims of abuse. Your choices have caused deep harm to your son. Her ruling came down fast and firmly. Full custody to Mr. Carver. Mrs. Carver will have supervised visitation only, pending completion of counseling and repayment of stolen funds. All marital assets remain frozen until the divorce is finalized. The restraining orders against Mrs. Carver and Mr. Holt stay in place. As we left the courthouse, Hannah made one last frantic grab for control. Tom, please, she said, her voice cracking. We can sort this out. I messed up, but we can fix it. Think of Owen. He needs his mom. I stopped and looked at her, really looked, knowing it'd be the last time. Owen needs a mother, I said, my voice steady. But that's not you anymore. You're someone who'd burn down her own kid's world for cash and a guy who's probably already sniffing around for his next target. That's not true, she whispered. Mason hasn't reached out since they locked him up, has he? Not a call, not a text. Her silence said it all. You threw away 15 years of marriage and your bond with your son for a guy who ditched you. The second thing got rough. That's not love, Hannah. That's just foolish. I walked away, not looking back. Mason Holt's criminal trial kicked off 6 weeks later. Despite the legal gray area around Lucas's surveillance, the prosecutor got Jimmy Rourke to testify after cutting him a deal for immunity. Rourke laid out the whole scheme, Mason's order to attack me, the cash handoff, the plan to make it look random. He even owned up to our fight, admitting he swung first. Mr. Holt paid me $6,000 to rough up the teacher, Rourke said on the stand. Told me to make it look like a street robbery, put him in the hospital. Mason's lawyer tried to trash Rourke's credibility, pointing to his rap sheet, but the evidence was airtight. Bank records showed Mason pulling out $6,000 in cash that day. Security cameras in the factory district backed up the timeline. Worst of all for Mason, he'd made calls from jail, thinking they were private, asking buddies to lean on Rourke to flip his story. Those calls were recorded. Mason was convicted of soliciting assault, conspiracy to commit violence, and witness tampering. Judge Alvarez sentenced him to 3 years in prison and ordered him to cover my medical bills and legal fees. Mr. Holt, Alvarez said, his voice heavy, you tried to fix your mess with violence. You've shown no regret, no grasp of the wreckage you've left across multiple families. Society needs protection from men like you. As they cuffed Mason and let him out, he locked eyes with me, sitting in the gallery with Owen. This ain't over, he mouthed. Owen leaned over. Actually, Dad, I think it is. I smiled. My son was right, the divorce wrapped up 3 months later with a settlement that gave me everything I'd fought for and then some. Hannah, staring down possible charges for theft and lying under oath, took a plea to avoid jail. She gave up any claim to our assets, nothing from my dad's estate, nothing from the house sale, nothing from my retirement. In exchange, the DA dropped the case over the $15,000 she'd swiped and the false claims in court. It's tough, Diane said as we signed the final papers. But she dug her own grave. What's next for her? I asked. She's starting from zero, new job, new place to live. The school district let her go after Mason's arrest. Word is she was tied up in some shady land deals with him. Her teaching license is under review. I felt a twinge of something, maybe pity, but it faded fast. Hannah made her choices. Now she'd live with them. My dad's estate cleared the next week, $72,000 that'd cover Owen's college and give us a fresh start. I used part of it to buy a small house in a quiet Phoenix suburb, in a better school district where nobody knew our story. Owen could finish high school without gossip trailing him. Lucas landed a gig as a cybersecurity consultant for the DA's office, his skills finally put to good use. He kept in touch, dropping updates over our monthly burgers. Hannah's working at a call center in Seattle, he said one night. Lives in a tiny apartment, rides the bus to work. Not exactly the glamorous life she thought she was upgrading to. Any word on Mason? I asked. Minimum security, but still a cage. His wife cleaned him out in the divorce. His real estate license is gone. Even if he gets out early, he's got nothing waiting for him. I nodded, a sense of finality settling in. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, I was grading papers on my new porch when Owen stepped outside, holding a letter. This came for you, Dad. The return address read Arizona State Penitentiary. Mason Holt. I nearly tossed it without opening it, but curiosity won out. The note was short. Tom, you probably don't want to hear from me, but you were right about Hannah. Not a single letter from her since I got locked up. Guess money and status mattered more than whatever she thought we had. You're a better man than I figured. Look after your boy. Mason. I read it twice, then passed it to Owen. What do you make of it? He scanned it, then ripped it in two. Some folks only learn when it's too late to count. That's pretty wise, I said. Had a good teacher. He grinned. That night, I called Diane to tie up one last loose end. The restraining order's up next month, Diane said over the phone. Want to renew it? I thought it over. Mason was locked up for another 2 years. Hannah was scraping by in Seattle, trying to piece her life back together. The threat was gone, neither of them had the strength to come after us anymore. Nah, I said after a beat. I think we're done with that. Good call, Diane said. Time to look ahead. I hung up and stepped outside, where Owen was shooting hoops in our new driveway. The kid had shot up 4 inches in the last year and was buzzing about trying out for varsity football come fall. Dad, he called, tossing the ball my way. You up for a quick one-on-one? I tugged off my tie and rolled up my sleeves. You're on, kid. As we played under the fading Arizona sunset, a feeling I hadn't known in over a year washed over me, pure, quiet peace. The nightmare was over. Justice had been done. My family was safe. For the first time since I'd stumbled across that Willow Creek Lodge photo, I, Tom Carver, was truly freed out. A phone call broke the calm on a Tuesday morning while I was going over college acceptance letters with Owen. 5 schools had offered him full academic scholarships, opportunities that wouldn't have existed if Hannah had gotten her hands on my dad's estate. Mr. Carver, an unfamiliar voice said, "This is Detective Whitaker with Seattle PD. I'm calling about your ex-wife, Hannah Carver." My gut twisted. What about her? She was found dead in her apartment yesterday. Likely overdose. My condolences. I sank into a chair. Despite the lies, the betrayal, Hannah had been my wife for a decade, Owen's mom. Was it, on purpose? Doesn't seem so, Whitaker said. Prescription meds mixed with alcohol. Neighbors said she'd been battling depression. After the call, I sat in silence, staring at nothing. Owen found me an hour later. Dad, what's wrong? I told him about the call. His face was a mess of emotions, sorrow, anger, maybe a hint of relief. Should I feel worse that I'm not more torn up? He asked. You feel what you feel, son, I said. Grief's messy, especially when someone's hurt you deeply. We talked for hours about Hannah, about forgiveness, about loving someone without excusing what they did. In the end, we decided to go to her funeral, not for closure, but because it felt right. The service was small, a few coworkers, some distant cousins, me and Owen. Mason was still in prison, not that he'd have shown up anyway. At the graveside, Owen surprised me by speaking. I forgive you, Mom, he said, his voice low. Not for what you did, but because holding on to anger's too heavy. I hope you're at peace now. I slung an arm around his shoulders, floored by my son's strength and heart. On the drive home, Owen brought up something I'd been chewing on too. Do you think she ever felt bad? What did she do to us? I chose my words carefully. I think she regretted how it all fell apart. Not sure she ever saw her choices as wrong, just that they didn't pan out like she hoped. That's kind of sad, Owen said. It is, I agreed. But it's not our weight to carry anymore. We drove the rest of the way in easy silence, each lost in thoughts about family, forgiveness, and the cost of betrayal. When we got home, a package was waiting on the porch, 2 more college acceptance letters for Owen, both with full scholarships. 7 schools, I said, flipping through them. 7 full rides. You can pick anywhere, son. Owen grinned. Been thinking about that. What if I stayed close? Maybe Arizona State or University of Arizona. I could swing by on weekends, help with the yard, make sure you're not living off burgers and coffee. My throat tightened. After everything, my son wanted to stick near, to look out for me. You don't need to worry about me, I said. Choose the school that's best for you. Dad, he said, seriously, you fought for me when it would have been easier to quit. Least I can do is stay close to make sure you don't turn into some grumpy teacher talking to his plants. I don't have plants, I said, chuckling, not yet. He smirked. But if I stay local, we're getting a dog. Deal, I said, laughing. That evening, I sat on the porch grading papers, watching Owen run drills in the driveway. I thought back on the road that brought us here, the betrayal, the digging, the courtroom battles, the fight, the victory. It all led to this quiet, contented moment. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas, saw the news about Hannah. You holding up? I typed back, we're good. Better than good. We're free. You deserve it, Mr. Carver, he replied. Thanks for everything. Couldn't have done it without you, anytime, I wrote. That's what friends do. I pocketed my phone and called Owen. Time for homework, kid.